how that builds strong, vibrant communities tomorrow. So the theme today has a title and a subtitle. But if I had to have a subtitle, it would be Home Sweet Home During the Pandemic, when home becomes the classroom. So as you know, students across the country responded to the pandemic. And one of the things that they encountered was home became the classroom. So there was the elimination of the lines of demarcation that made home private personal space. Many students felt that the pandemic afforded a gaze into their homes and lives. Virtual learning afforded strangers access into their rooms for view, judgment, and often ridicule. The home had been a place of refuge, even if not a mansion or the ideal housing situation. Home at least was the intimate place where only family members and loved ones were able to see its shortcomings. The small rooms, the old furniture, the peeling paint, and the clutter. The thought of others who had been confined to the arena of the academy, now having access to view inside students' homes, made it difficult for some to focus on their educations. They found comfort in limiting interaction and engagement by keeping their cameras off in class and keeping their microphones on mute. The pandemic forced isolation upon young people and took them away from the social interactions and educational experiences that had defined for them what it meant to be teenagers. In high school, and also young adults in college. Classwork and homework merged into the same spaces without the demarcation of place and time. There was no physical exercise or extracurricular activities, just time spent day in and day out on the computer. If a student had their own room, they often found themselves alone on the computer for much of the day. If they shared a room and had access to a computer, they often found they had to complete their coursework in rooms and spaces that were where others were engaged in activities, such as watching the TV. Particularly, this was a problem because younger siblings and older siblings were also home. They had been forced home with little notification from schools and colleges. Some high school students that we work with had to help make ends meet by working. Others had to babysit, and some even had to care for their own children. Many students adapted to the virtual classroom space. They enjoyed the lack of social pressure, going to class in their pajamas. That was all fun, and it helped and allowed them, many of them, to focus on learning. Others did not do so well, in part because the coronavirus pandemic disrupted almost every area of life and society, leaving many of them feeling lonely, disconnected, and isolated at home. We were all, and still are, navigating an unprecedented situation. For many students, all of the disruption that they experienced in their lives was just simply overwhelming. And when technology failed at school, students experienced an even higher level of frustration. Everyone was and is still adjusting to a new reality. Today, I would like to share with you information about policy pathways and our distance learning programs for youth, and how we navigated during the toughest days of the pandemic. So as I mentioned, I'm Dr. Dee Palani Lucas, and I would just like to tell you a little bit about policy pathways. So Policy Pathways, as I mentioned, is a nonprofit organization headquartered in Richmond, Virginia. Our mission is to train and educate young people who want to become leaders in public policy and who want to serve in policy-related fields in the public and private sector. Our vision is a society with representative diversity at the highest levels of policy decision-making, and also the enhanced empowerment of disenfranchised populations and communities. So at Policy Pathways, we situate young people at the nexus of a number of policy streams. Our curriculum is interdisciplinary, and it emphasizes viewing policy from the perspective of intersectionality. And so, as you know, as housing experts, you know that housing policy is impacted by criminal justice policy, transportation policy, education policy, social welfare policy, energy policy, agricultural policy. There is an intersectionality when we analyze and learn about public policy. Now, many of our participants, they are aware of the impacts of policies on their lives, but they don't actually know what policy is. So they may ask, why is it that the major highway is situated next to our housing community or our neighborhoods? They don't know that there were policies that led highways through certain communities. So what we attempt to do is share with them what policy is. And as we all know, over the past couple of years, young people are using social media and other platforms to become very much civically engaged through protests, through activism. But many of them get discouraged when policy making takes longer than they anticipated. So, as many of you know, a policy is a course of action that an individual or group consistently follows to deal with the problem. Public policy is a course of government action or inaction in response to public problems. So why learn about public policy? Why should young people learn about public policy? Because policies impact their lives directly or indirectly every day. And so policy pathways, students are able to bring their experiences and their thoughts to the classroom and learn about policies that are impacting their lives in an environment that is nurturing and supportive. We operate 4 primary programs and 2 signature programs. Our first program is our Policy and Society year-round college preparatory program. This program partners with school districts. And so students in our taking our courses and learning our curriculum are actually earning credit in school. So this is a credit-bearing course. And another nice thing about this particular program is that even though it's college prep, it's open to all students, students who are not college bound. And I have a little story I'll tell you about a young lady who was not college bound when she came into the program. And now next spring, she will be at Hampton University. Our second program is our Summer Academy for Policy Leadership and Public Service online. We run an internship program and then also PPCG, which is our Policy Pathways Consulting Group. Today, I'm going to focus primarily on our Summer Academy online. So initially, when we were thinking about our program prior to the pandemic, it was to be a face-to-face program. But once the pandemic hit, we decided to transfer our program into a distance learning modality. So all of our curriculum currently, we deliver online and remotely. And many of our faculty and administrators, we teach at the college level and we teach distance learning courses, and we've been teaching and building distance learning courses for 10 or more years. And so it was very easy to transition to a distance learning platform. So what I'm going to talk about today is some of the lessons that we learned from exit interviews in 2020 and how we responded to those concerns or issues in 2021. So our Summer Academy online is a 2-week session. It's immersive. We run from 10 a.m. to 4. We offer engaging curriculum. Our capstone projects are very challenging and engaging. And for 2 years, and I'd like to thank Ramona for being a capstone site representative. And so the first year that the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development worked with Policy Pathways, that year the capstone team looked at the impact of COVID-19 on the poultry industry on the Eastern Shore. Fascinating capstone project. The students loved it. This year, students looked at government relations with tribal nations and how to improve those relationships. We have capstone projects out of Ghana. We work with an organization in Ghana, where students are looking at water and sanitation issues. We also have a project, and I'll tell you more about this, with Hampton Redevelopment and Housing Authority, where we are assessing the needs of Hampton Redevelopment and Housing Authority residents. Those are just a few of our capstone projects that make our program fun and exciting and dealing with real world policy issues. We have top professors from around the world participating in our program, policy experts, business leaders, community and nonprofit leaders as well. And in terms of course content hours, our summer program is equivalent to a 15-week semester course. So just to tell you a little bit about our curriculum, it's guided by a 5-pronged pedagogical framework that moves from critical thinking to policy formation into policy analysis, advocacy and persuasion, and our capstone project. So the aims of the Summer Academy Online are to help students develop the knowledge, skills, and abilities to understand the impact of how policies are affecting their neighborhoods, cities, states, nations, and also to help those students who desire to be leaders in their schools, organizations, and communities. So our target population is comprised of high school students, rising sophomores, juniors, seniors, dual enrollment and community college students, and college and university students. They have to be between the ages of 15 and 25 years old. So, home sweet home during the pandemic, when home becomes the classroom. We learned a few things during our exit interviews and just from talking with our students. Many of them in 2020 had were just coming out of the most, the rise of the pandemic when it was at its worst. Schools had shut down. Some of them had laptops that were loaners from the school. Others had to return those laptops back to their schools. And so what we found was that students had to adjust not only to where would they get a computer, even though they wanted to be in the program, they might have borrowed a computer. Some of them joined our program using their phones, and they did their work, wrote papers on their phones. We found that motivation was an issue. Even though they had applied for the program, some of them were late joining. And because our program is so intense, if a student joined on day 3, we were already into our policy analysis and policy formation segments. From our 5 core areas, we have 15 modules that guide our work. And so others would come late, just adjusting to the stress of the pandemic. There was a lack of reliable internet service for many students. Some of the schools provided hotspots. Others had to go to locations where they could have access to the internet. Broadband was a problem, as I know you've heard about. Computer illiteracy. Some of the students were not familiar with PowerPoint. So this was the first time that they had to put together a PowerPoint and make a presentation. Um, so the whole thing with the digital divide was a major issue for us. Some of our participants had time management issues. They had to work or babysit, and others, and we could see this as well. So when we talk about this gaze into their homes, um, we could see siblings jumping on the sofa in the background. We could hear the TV. And so that just limited participation for some of the students participating in the program. So the challenges for us in terms of late attendance, and this is not all, this was a few students that we faced these issues. Most of the students in the program completed the program, enjoyed the program, but any student, and what we found, particularly during the pandemic, we had to learn to meet every student where they were and to support students and to respond to their needs. So the issues of late attendance, the weak internet connections, in terms of students feeling disengaged, all were challenges for us, for those students in terms of completing the program. So how did we respond to these issues? We developed community partnerships. And those partnerships also came with computer labs. So students no longer had to rely upon computers at home or broadband. They were not isolated. And what we did was we partnered with the Hampton Roads Community Action Program. And this was just one partnership, but what we were able to do was to embed policy pathways within their much broader Discovery Summer program. So while students before the 2-week session with policy pathways, they may have been touring college campuses, or afterwards going to King's Dominion. For the 2 weeks of the Policy Pathways summer program, students participated in our summer academy. And so we had counselors to support them. We had teaching assistants on the ground. There was social interaction with other students. There were wraparound services. So in addition to Hampton Roads Community Action Program, we also worked with the Petersburg Parks and Leisure Services and Pathways Petersburg, who also provided the same support. So a computer lab with assistants and counselors to support the students doing their work. But we also had wraparound services. So they would pick the students up who needed transportation and bring them to the computer lab. Now, while we had students at these sites, local sites, we also had students in our summer program from around the world. So we had students from New York and from California and from Charlottesville, also joining in the classroom from these different locations. Another thing that we did, normally we have an orientation session on the first day of our Policy Pathways Summer Academy session, those 2 weeks. We started having smaller orientation sessions with groups of students from local communities, where we were not rushed by time. and we could take the time to walk them through our learning management system, the expectations of the program. Parents attended if there were questions. And also for students who may have had to work, we recorded our sessions for them. Now, the other thing that was wonderful that we did is we provided students with a stipend, so they did not have to work if they didn't want to. And what ended up happening is we didn't lose one student in 2021, not one. And so we have seen many students adapt and thrive in distance learning environments. Many of them came to enjoy the chat rooms and the breakout rooms. And I'd like to just tell you about one young man. This young man, and this is an example, he was in our year-round program, but this is just an example of how our curriculum and teachers and programs can transform youth. This young man had been in the teacher's classroom in the fall semester, and had never shown his face, had never typed into chat other than to say, "I'm here" at the beginning of class. Our program is run in the spring. So this young man was in our, what's called our Shaping Our Future Policy Pathways course with the Richmond Public Schools. And so when it came time to talk about our capstone projects, we were asking the students in the class who would like to take the lead on a particular capstone project. He was assigned to a capstone project, another one out of Ghana, that looked at climate change and deforestation on community sustainability. And so this young man, for the first time, this teacher had ever seen him type in the chat, he said, "I won't lead, but I'll follow." That's all he said. We were amazed. Just that. We were blown away. So as time went on, and we were talking about our capstone projects, guest speakers coming in, the next thing we asked, oh no, the next thing he did was he started flickering his camera on and off, like you can just barely see him, like, I'm here, see me, but just shy, but he would flicker his camera so we could see his face. A couple of weeks later, we asked, are there any volunteers who would like to read a slide for the capstone project? And he volunteered. He says, "I will, but I stutter." And so, oh my goodness, we just were just like, oh, this is great. And he came as we practiced and put the slide presentation together. He started coming, he started keeping his camera on. He would keep his camera on so we could see him. And at the end of the year, we had our capstone showcase. And this young man presented slides. And there he was. On one side of him on the screen was Secretary Atif Corney. There he is. And on the other side was Superintendent Jason Cameras. That to us was success. And we are extremely pleased with this young man. So Policy Pathways and its partners have worked collaboratively to continue to serve youth and teachers. Our goal is equitable access to high-quality policy education. We learned that we had to be flexible We now have a self-paced component to our curriculum in addition to teacher-led instruction. And also, let's see, let me get this. Oh, and also in terms of just opening our curriculum to everyone in terms of equitable access. And I mentioned that there's a young lady, and I'm going to leave some time for questions. There's a young lady in our program. She came into the program and I asked her, I said, well, what do you want to do after high school? She was a senior. She says, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I think I might want to learn how to do nails. That's what she said. I want to learn how to do nails, acrylics. And so we assigned her, her teacher and we assigned her to a capstone project with the Hampton University Department of Architecture. That capstone project looked at increasing solar energy capacity in Virginia Beach and Richmond. This young lady jumped right into that project and impressed everyone. Professor Easter encouraged her to apply to the Department of Architecture. She applied and is now in the spring will be a freshman at Hampton University. So, given our aim of equitable access to high quality policy education, we recognize that support, compassion, and social interaction are critical to student success. Our society needs to hear young voices and needs to nurture and embrace young leaders who are seeking to bring about positive change in their schools, communities, the nation, and the world. So as we think about the future, we have to keep in mind that online learning is continuing to expand. We have to think about closing the digital divide and helping to nurture and build the confidence of students, particularly when they don't have the support at home or in their communities in terms of learning how to master online learning environments. Because even if they return to face-to-face classes, things may happen where we have to shift back to online environments. And for policy pathways, what we do is we stream into the classroom. So we are more like a hybrid now in how we deliver our programs. And it's important to provide support. And so this is our circle of support. And so it's our instructors, our capstone leaders, peers in the classroom, program administrators, working with community leaders. And just to give you some statistics, at the conclusion of our most recent program, 76% of high school students indicated that they are likely to pursue a public policy degree in college. And 50% of the respondents indicated a likelihood of pursuing a career in public policy. So thank you very much. It has been a pleasure. And Grace, if there are any questions, you can let me know. Okay, any questions? Yes, in the back. Thank you for that question. That's a very good question because it took 2 years of building relationships with individuals in the Richmond public school system uh, prior to our first course being offered as and included on their master schedule. Our curriculum aligns with the Virginia SOL assessments and also with the 5 areas that the Department of Education wants of all of its graduates. Um, so it took a while and takes patience. It takes a lot of patience. And it takes a quality product that people know will transform young people's lives. Um, we have a board. Our board is important in helping to build relationships. So it's not just me, it's a 10-person board. We have an administrative staff. We follow through on what we say we'll do. Um, Another piece is having evaluations that demonstrate your effectiveness. Um, so it just took 2 years. It didn't just happen. That's what I'm saying. We had to develop a proposal that outlined everything that we were going to do with timelines and budgets um, and present that information. So yeah.
So I thank you, Dr. Warren. I do have one
Mhm.
one kind of question that's coming in. It says if there are other organizations who want to use your Capstone Summer Academy program as a model and to create maybe one similar to
Mhm.
yours, what would you say are essential best practices that they should include in the design of their program for successful student and program outcomes?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh, First of all, what we do is we write everything. I think it's so important so that there's not a misunderstanding in terms of responsibility. So, in terms of our capstone projects, we have we identify our capstone sites. We develop what's called our Capstone Overview with site representatives, where we work together to outline that policy issue. We provide context for the students. We give them everything in this overview. So, in addition to context, we lay out the policy issue. We provide resources so that because time is limited, we provide a list of videos, reports that are that will help them do their work. Um, we also have a rubric, so we lay out what their PowerPoint presentation should look like, and we provide the capstone site representative and the students. We've also found that it is important for some of our teams to have faculty advisors that help the students when our capstone site representatives are not there. So our capstone site representatives, we look to them to be involved about 2 hours a week. But during the other time, those students are working on their projects, and they work on their project during the program term. And so some of our guest speakers come into the classroom and work with students on particular areas. So we have a professor. he comes in and he talks to the students about statistics and their charts, their tables, how to talk about their tables, how to explain graphs. We have another professor that comes into the class, and she talks about um, uh, how to present policy information from a persuasive or perspective. She's out of marketing, VCU marketing. We have another lady who works, she's a research methods instructor, and she works with the students laying out their um, capstone project. So we have all of this support that helps the student because our students are from a wide array of learning levels and performance levels. Some require accommodations, others are uh, very advanced and move fast. But what's beautiful is watching them work together and help each other. And so that's what I would say. You know, the rubric, um, clear expectations in terms of the uh, site representatives, if you have a sponsor, if you have faculty advisors, all of that needs to be clearly stated for the capstone projects to be successful.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah, 1 minute.
Yes, we use an independent evaluator who developed surveys. And so at the end of each week or session, he would, or like the semester, well, we had 2 quarters. So we had a survey of the students on the first day, and then at the end of the first quarter, and then at the end of the second quarter. And those surveys are distributed to the students directly. They don't come to policy pathways, and they go right back to the independent evaluator. And that's where the statistics, the 76% pursuing, interested in pursuing a degree in public policy, those were from his report. Mhm. I saw another hand up over here. Was there? If not, okay. Well, thank you very much. This was a pleasure. I do have business cards. I have some brochures. If you came in late, there are some brochures here at the front. And thank you so much, Ramona and Grace.
Thank you, Dr. Appreciate you for coming, participating in the Governor's Housing Conference. Thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to work with your students, policy pathways.
Enjoyed it.
Really appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you all for coming, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of the conference. Also, before you leave, if you'd like to know the gamification code,
Here, you want to talk here?
the gamification code that if you'd like to have it is XF as in Frank, E as in Edward, 36, M as in Monday, 59. I'll repeat that code. X FE 36M59. And thank you all for coming to this session. I've appreciated working with Dr. Polani Lucas, and I hope that you would consider possibly becoming a partner with her organization. Please enjoy the rest of the conference. Please be safe, and I hope to see you all at our receptions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Polani.